What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm going to talk about free hit for Game Week 4. I have been including my free hit drafts in my Game Week preview videos, but as it's the international break, we've got a little bit longer to talk about stuff like this. Should you free hit this week? It's probably mostly for people that are low on Liverpool and Palace players and don't want to bring them in to hold them longer term. Obviously, Liverpool have got Burnley away. It's a great week to have Mo Salah as captain. Crystal Palace have got Sunderland at home. If you haven't got many players from those teams, and you've got 3 from Forest, for example, with Arsenal away, this might be a good week to free hit. In terms of other opportunities down the road, Game Week 6 potentially, if you don't have many Man City players, they've got Burnley at home. But outside of that, there's not really another week that looks super obvious for free hit. So I would say 4 or 6 for most people. Otherwise, you're holding it for down the road in case you get stuck or in case an opportunity kind of opens up later on. Anyway, let's get into the draft. So in defence, I've gone for a double up. So I've got Raya and Gabriel from Arsenal and then Munoz and Lacroix from Crystal Palace. If I was looking for defenders from other teams, it would probably be Newcastle, like Fabian Schär against Wolves at home, or potentially someone like Van Dijk against Burnley away. Absolutely, it's worth thinking about Liverpool defenders this week. But for this draft, I've gone for a triple up on their attack instead. With Arsenal, it's always a good week to have an Arsenal defender, especially when they're at home against a team like Forest. And this is nothing to do with the result against West Ham where Forest lost 3-0. I probably would have had 1 or 2 Arsenal defenders in this free hit draft either way. They're just so strong. Right, even against Liverpool away from home, they keep the score down to 1-0, and that's from a wonder free kick. Yes, Liverpool had some chances, but not major ones. Arsenal defence is just the real deal. We know Gabriel's great from set pieces. And with Raya, the reason I chose him rather than a second defender is obviously Saliba's gone and got injured in Game Week 3, and I just don't trust the fullbacks' minutes. Like Calafiori, potentially you could go for someone like Timber, but I just wouldn't take that kind of risk on free hit unless you're absolutely confident at the minutes, which is why I've gone for Raya. Also, I'm not super convinced that any of the other defenders, apart from Gabriel, are better than Munoz and Lacroix. If you watch that game against Villa, it was a nice reminder for those of us that don't own Munoz how attacking he can be. He's almost playing like a right winger, so you've got the attacking threat and he can sometimes pick up defensive contributions, although probably not in a game against Sunderland. And then Lacroix's got decent goal threat like Gabriel, and he's also great for defensive contributions as well. So even if I was thinking about Henderson in goal, I'm not sure I'd be that keen on an Arsenal defender. In terms of combinations, I much prefer Raya and Lacroix than like Timber and Dean Henderson. So double up in defence on 2 defences. And yes, Van Dijk from Liverpool, Alisson in goal, someone like that could be good, or possibly a Newcastle defender. But I quite like how that looks. And honestly, on free hit, I don't always do this, but sometimes I do like going all in on certain positions. So having like a double or a triple up in defence and having a double or a triple up in attack. And that's what I've done here. So in midfield, obviously Salah is in. He's kind of non-negotiable this week with Burnley away. And pretty much anyone that's got him in their team for Game Week 4 is going to captain him this week. So that's a fairly straightforward decision. I've also included Cody Gakpo. Now I'm recording this on Monday, the 1st of September, which is transfer deadline day. But the transfer window isn't shut yet. So lots of moves could be made by 7 p.m. UK time on Monday. In the morning, it's been reported that Alexander Isak to Liverpool is done. Now, it's not official at the time of recording, but we pretty much knew that move was going to go through anyway. Long term, he will be first choice number 9 for Liverpool. No doubts about that. And that does affect the minutes of both Gakpo and Ekitike, I think. Because it's not 100% guarantee that Gakpo will just play 90 minutes week in, week out left wing. And it's not to say that Ekitike or Isak are left wingers, because they're not. But Slot might come up with a system to play both of them and maybe drop Gakpo at some point or potentially just sub him early. But I think for Game Week 4, because Isak's not had a proper pre-season, because he's not had any matches in the Premier League, I think we're going to see a Gakpo, Ekitike, Salah front 3 again. And so long-term minutes, I'm not sure I'd be comfortable enough to have Gakpo necessarily, although he still could be good value for less than 8 million. But on a free hit draft, I'm pretty sure he starts. And I'm pretty sure that Burnley away is a good fixture. And I think he'll easily get kind of 70, 75 minutes plus. And I think that's enough to include him on a free hit. The other 2 midfielders were a little bit trickier. One of the reasons for that is money is quite tight in this draft. I've not actually been able to fit in both Salah and Haaland. There isn't really that much money to go around. So I've gone for Semenyo against Brighton at home, who's had a pretty good start to the season, and then Harvey Barnes against Wolves at home. Now, I have to say a word of caution on Harvey Barnes. I would have had him in my free hit draft for game week 3 as well, and he didn't start, which was really surprising, if I'm honest. I do think he'll be in that Newcastle team for Wolves at home. I think he's probably worth taking the risk on. If you look at other midfielders kind of in and around that 7 million price point or below, there's not a huge amount of options right now. Maybe if you had a bit more team value, you could think about someone like Eze at Arsenal, but double defence is so nice and Gyökeres is such a good option. Like, if you look at the fixtures, I'm not really sure who else you would go for. Like a Brighton midfielder away to Bournemouth, just not worth risking. Maybe Sarr against Sunderland. If Sarr is fit, then maybe you could include him and drop one of the defenders instead. That would probably be nicer than both Barnes and Semenyo. But as I'm recording this, Sarr is a bit of a doubt for game week 4. I know he said personally he's okay, but we need to wait for more news. You could potentially include someone like Grealish against Aston Villa. Maybe Dewsbury Hall as well if you're really stuck for cash. I like Harry Wilson for Fulham if they haven't signed any other wingers and if he's fully fit. There's just not that many at that kind of price point. Like if you could get up to a Bruno Fernandes or a Brian Mbeumo, you could potentially look at them for Man United. But I think when you start putting your free hit drafts together, you'll realise that money is quite tight. Even to the point that at one stage when I was thinking about this draft, I almost put a 4-4-2 formation together or even a 4-3-3. And that's before even mentioning Cole Palmer. Like if he's fit for game week 4, Brentford away is a great fixture and he's not in this draft. But he's also 10 million, so you've got to find even more money from somewhere. So it's quite difficult to put a team together, I think, this week. Wirtz is another one that I would think about as well, potentially instead of Gakpo. But I think right now, the bigger goal threat between the two is coming from Gakpo. So that's the midfield. And then up front, I've got my 3 forwards. Ekitike for Liverpool against Burnley away, Mateta for Palace against Sunderland at home, and then Gyökeres for Arsenal against Forest at home. I would love to include Erling Haaland in this draft because I think Man United at home is a pretty good fixture for him. But it's just really difficult with the funds. When I was streaming on Sunday night, like instant reaction to game week 3 and looking ahead to game week 4, someone asked me what my front 3 would be. And my initial instinct was Mateta, Gyökeres and Haaland. But when I've actually tried to put the draft together, it's really difficult because of funds. So if you can find a way to get Haaland in, then I would definitely think about it. But I guess this week, even though he's good against Man United, he's not as important as Salah. So if funds are tight, you should prioritise Salah because he's a better captain, in my opinion. Ekitike's minutes have been okay so far. They are going to drop with Isak, but as I said with Gakpo, I think Ekitike will start this game and we'll probably see Isak off the bench. I don't think that Ekitike is like someone that is absolutely essential in this draft. So if you wanted to drop him and go for a defender instead, I think that's fine. If you look at his first 3 game weeks, 71, 79 and 78 minutes, a bit like Wirtz, he is playing the majority of the game but getting subbed early. So it is a potential problem. With Isak in the squad, he'll definitely get subbed early in game week 4. It's just about whether or not he can get enough returns in the time. Again, I like the way this is set up with triple Liverpool attack, but I'm not against dropping Ekitike down to someone else, maybe even going 3-5-2 and putting Van Dijk in defence. Also, by the way, by the time you watch this, Mark Gay from Crystal Palace to Liverpool might be done as well. That's a cheap option into the Liverpool defence, especially if Konate is out injured, which we're waiting on news for. But Ekitike at the moment is in. Mateta's quite obvious to pick this week. Sunderland at home is just such a good fixture on paper. We know he's on penalties now with no Eze. He took one against Villa in game week 3, so there's no issues there. And his price is just quite nice. In a week where funds are tight, getting him for less than 8 million, pretty much a no-brainer, I would say. Triple Crystal Palace. If you haven't got triple Crystal Palace, it's a bit like not having triple Man United last week in my eyes. And I know that triple up on Man United didn't do very well, but I'd have a lot of confidence in Palace players this week. And then Gyökeres, again, just kind of in by default because he's cheaper than Haaland. Like at 9 million, not a bad price against Forest at home. Defensively for Forest, I do not think it was a mistake to start the season with one of their defenders. I had Nico Williams as well. The fixtures are really good. And for most people, outside of thinking about free hit, you should probably keep them for Burnley away and Sunderland at home in 5 and 6. But their stats last season did dip in the second half. And they became like a mid-table defence. So they're not as good as they were like earlier on in the season and the season before. So there is a bit of a dip with the Forest defence in general. And Arsenal are at home, so they're strong. And I know they didn't score any goals against Liverpool, etc. But that's a tough defence to play against, no matter what happened in the first 2 game weeks. I just think Gyökeres looks strong. His minutes are great right now because of the injuries. He's on penalties as well. He's a pretty obvious pick. I would say if I was building a draft, Munoz would definitely be in 100%. I'd probably want Gabriel as well. Salah's a no-brainer. Mateta's pretty good and Gyökeres. So those 5 players, everyone else, I'm more than happy to have a discussion about who should be in instead. But I think that looks like a pretty solid draft. 3 from Liverpool, 3 from Arsenal, 3 from Palace, and then Barnes and Semenyo mixed in as well. Pretty strong. If you're free hitting this week, let me know what you would change in the comments below. If you've enjoyed that, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I'll be back tomorrow once the transfer window is shut with early thoughts.